Okay, Math 12A. I've gone through and looked through most of your stuff for, I'll get it, for right angle triangles in SOHCAHTOA. Really, I did 25 already in the answers that you looked at on Tuesday. And I really didn't see any other big questions besides that. If you're not handing your homework in, you really need to be doing that. I need to see that you're doing it, that you know what you're doing. I need to know whether you have questions. I need you to communicate with me. Most of you are doing a great job at that. So we are continuing the very last section in chapter 8, which is section 8.6. And in the first part, in example 1, we talked about if you have a right angle triangle. But what if you don't have a right angle triangle? If you don't have a right angle triangle, so for example, this is example 2, by the way. They tell you that this angle is actually 105.2, and this is P, and this is Q, and this is R. And they tell you that this side is 18.5, and they tell you that this side is 23.2. And they want us to find, solve the triangle. So one of the things I noticed is that some people, when it said solve the triangle, they would just find the angles or they would just find the sides. Hi, Gabs, you want to come up? She's decided she likes being in videos, apparently. As soon as she hears me talking upstairs, she comes running. When they say solve the triangle, they mean find all the angles, find all the sides. So we need to find angle Q. We need to find angle R, and we need to find side Q. Remember that you label the side whatever angle it's directly across from. So if this is angle Q, then this is side Q. Now, because this is not a right angle triangle, I can't use SOHCAHTOA. I can't use that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, because hypotenuse is the side that's across from a right angle. There isn't a right angle. So I can't use SOHCAHTOA, all right? And the same thing, even tangent, I can't use, because tangent is opposite over adjacent. But which side is adjacent, this one or this one? There isn't. So that leaves you with two choices. You either have to use law of sines, something called law of sines, or law of cosines. Law of sines looks like this. A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Now you can replace those with whatever letters, right? Q over sine Q equals X over sine X. It doesn't matter what the letters are. It also doesn't matter whether I put the side on top and the sine A on the bottom. I could write it this way. Sine A over A equals sine B over side B. It doesn't matter as long as you are consistent. It doesn't matter which way you do it, okay? For whatever reason, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason in my head, I always have that the side is on top and the angle is on the bottom. But that's just how I have it memorized. Now, how do I know whether I should use law of sines, which is what this is, I'll write it above, law of sines, or law of cosines? Well, first off, you want to hope that you can use law of sines, because law of cosines, to me, is way worse. But here's how I know. I can give you technical ways that you can know, and I will give you those, but let me give you the short version. If you know everything about a letter, so for instance, in this one, I know angle P and I know side P. I know everything there is to know about the letter P, which means I can use law of sines. If I don't know. So let me give you the technical term for that. If you know two sides and what they call a non-interior angle. If you know two sides and an angle that is not in between those two sides. See how this angle is outside of the two sides? It's not in between. This would be in between. I call it, it's not a sandwich if you don't have a sandwich, all right? So I know two sides and an angle that is not in there. Then I can use law of sines. I can also use law of sines if I know two angles and one side, because if I know two angles, I really know three, because I know all angles in a triangle add up to 180. So if I know two, I can figure out the third one, okay? So we use law of sines if I know two sides and one angle, and I'm going to put it this way, it's not a sandwich. The angle is not in between the two sides I know, or if I know two angles and one side. I don't know why I did that, one side. If I know two angles and one side, then I can use law of sines. If possible, you want to use law of sines. And again, the short way to remember it is if you know everything about a letter, both the angle and the side of that letter, you can use law of sines. Now, you're never going to use, I'm going to put you down because you're getting heavy. You can go lay down in the corner though. You're never going to use all three of these pieces at the same time. You're going to use two of the pieces at the same time, and then you're going to cross multiply to solve. So, for example, I could say that P over sine P equals Q over sine Q. I really just need one fraction equaling another fraction, and I'm going to use the letter that I know everything about, because if I know this one, side P is 23.2 over sine of angle P, which is 105.2, is equal to side Q, which I don't know, over sine, oh, I can't do this one yet. I can't do this one yet because I don't know anything about Q. I don't know side Q and I don't know angle Q, so I can't use Q. But I can use R over sine R. I'm kind of glad I screwed that up because I got to show you that. So, didn't mean to do it, but whatever. I could fake it and pretend that I knew what I was doing. So, side R would be 18.5 over sine of angle R, because I don't know what angle R is. Okay, so what I would do with this is I would actually cross multiply. So I multiply the top of this fraction with the bottom of this one. So I'm going to have 23.2 times sine of R equals, and then I'm going to cross multiply here, the top of this side with the bottom of this one, 18.5 times sine of 105.2. Now, at this point, if you want, you can put that in your calculator. The thing is, you're going to get a big, long answer, and if you round it off too much, it's going to throw your calculations off. So I tend to put everything into my calculator at the very end. Okay, now I want to get sine R by itself, so I'm going to divide this side by 23.2. So I'm going to divide this side by 23.2. So I have sine of R is equal to, and again, I could figure that out. Now I'm going to figure it out, but I'm not going to clear it off my calculator when I do. So I'm going to do 18.5 times sine of 105.2, and I'm going to hit equals, and then I'm going to divide by 23.2, and I get 0.7695, and it keeps on going. Now I'm going to leave it on my calculator. I have that answer up on my calculator. I'm not going to clear it, okay? So now I want to figure out what angle R is. So I'm going to move sine over here, and I'm going to have arc sine of 0.7695, Now, because I haven't cleared it off my calculator, and I have a little button that says ANS, which stands for answer, I'm going to do second function sine, and then I'm going to hit that answer button because that means of the answer that just a second ago was on my screen. And I'm going to get that R is 50.3. So now I know that angle R is 50.3 degrees. All right? So I have figured out one thing. All I have figured out is just one, 50.3 degrees. So now I have to figure out something else. Well, now I'm going to go for the easy one. I'm going to figure out angle Q, because for Q, I'll do it up here, because for Q, I know that there's 180 degrees in a triangle. I know that angle P is 105.2. I know that angle R is 50.3. So if I take those off 180, I get 24.5 degrees. So now I know that angle Q is 24.5 degrees. I now have Gabby fur in my nose. Yes, it's your fault. Okay, so now I have almost everything except Q. So I'm going to use the law of sines again, but I'm going to set it up like I did by accident the first time. I'm going to say, listen, P over sine P. I could use Q over sine Q, but the reason I'm not choosing that one is because I figured out angle Q and I figured out side Q, and if I messed that up somewhere along the way, I would be using wrong numbers in here. So I'm going to use the numbers that were provided to me. So P over sine P equals Q over sine Q. All right, and I'm looking for this little one. So I still have to use one number that I figured out, but it's one number versus two. So I'm going to do 23.2 over sine of 105.2 equals Q over sine of 24.5. So again, I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to do 23.2 times sine of 24.5 equals Q times sine of 105.2. I would like Q to be by itself, so I'm going to divide this side by sine of 105.2. So I'm going to divide this side by sine of 105.2. And so this is just a matter of putting this into my calculator. Be sure that you put it in carefully though. 23.2 times sine of 24.5. Now I hit equals when I finish putting in the top. So I have 9.62 whatever. Then I hit divided by sine of 105.2. And I get, they wanted me to round it to the nearest tenth. It's 9.96. So I'm going to round that off to 10.0. So that was done just using law of sines. And if you want the technical, you use law of sines when you know two side and one angle that is not an interior angle. In other words, it's not in between the two sides, you know. Or if you know two angles and one side. What I would tell you is if you know everything about one specific letter, if you know both the angle and the side about one specific letter, you can use law of sines. So what if that's not what you know? If that's not what you know, then you are stuck using law of cosines. Law of cosines is my least favorite thing to use, and I avoid it if I can. But sometimes you just can't. So, law of cosines. If you look at the bottom of page 494, they give you law of cosines three different ways. And then, yeah, they give you law of cosines 3 different ways. I'm going to give it to you once and know that you're smart enough to figure this out. So a squared is equal to b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos of a. Now again, the letters are not important. If I had P, Q, and R again, and the side I wanted to find was side Q, then it would be Q squared is equal to P squared plus R squared minus 2PR cos of Q. Whatever side I'm trying to find, that's the angle I would know. That's the angle I would know. So, how do I know if I have to use law of cosines? So again, this is example number 3. An example, and this is 3A. There's actually 2 pieces to example 3. In example 3, they label this D, E, and F. And again, if they didn't give you the triangle and they just said the triangle is DEF, angle D is this, it wouldn't matter how you drew it. Just label it D, E, and F. I could have put D, E, and F, or I could have put D, E, and F. It wouldn't matter. And then they say little d, side D is 2.5. So the only thing that matters is the 2.5 is across from whatever angle you labeled D. Little e is 3.5. So again, it doesn't matter except that E is across from whatever you labeled your E. So that would be 3.5. And F, angle F, is 59.4 degrees. 59.4 degrees. So again, I can use law of sines if I know everything about a specific letter. So in this, I know angle F, but I don't know side F. So I don't know everything about F. I know side E, but I don't know angle E. So I don't know everything about E. And I know side D, but I don't know angle D. So I don't know everything about D. There is no letter that I know both the side and the angle for. That means I'm going to have to use law of cosines. What I want you to notice is I know 2 sides and the angle that is in between. It is called an interior angle. Actually, the word that they use, I'm trying to see if they use it here, because I don't think it's interior, it's something else. I just like the word sandwiched, okay? The angle is sandwiched in between the 2 sides. That would tell me I have to use law of cosines. So if you know, you're going to use law of cosines. If you know 2 sides and 1 angle, and it is a sandwich. In other words, the angle is in between the 2 sides. Or if you know 3 sides and no angles at all, then you're going to have to use law of cosines. We're going to do one of each of these scenarios, okay? Now, a lot of times if they ask you to solve the triangle, you only have to use law of cosine once, and then you can switch back to law of sines. You could do law of cosines over and over again if you wanted to. I just find that it is the hard one. And I'm going to, as I do this, I'm going to talk to you about some of the really, really common mistakes, because there's a couple of them that a lot of people make, like a lot, like probably 80% of people, when they do law of cosines, at one point or another they screw it up, and I'm going to show you how, because it's the same way every time. All right, so in this one, they want us to find F to the nearest 1/10 of a meter. So they want to know F. They're not asking us to solve the whole thing, so I don't have to bother to go find anything else. I just have to find F. So if I want to find F, I'm going to write it this way. F squared is equal to D squared plus E squared minus 2DE cos of F. All right, because whatever side I'm trying to find, that's the angle that I know. The other 2 sides are here. Now, I could have written it e squared plus d squared minus 2ed, as long as the sides on over here are d and e and the angle is angle F. That's all that really matters. So F squared is equal to d squared, and d is 2.5 plus e squared, e is 3.5, minus 2 times d, which is 2.5, times e, which is 3.5, times cos of 59.4. Now, I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do it to help eliminate one of the major problems that people have with this. What a lot of people do is they do 2.5 squared plus 3.5 squared minus 2 times 2.5 times 3.5, and then they multiply the whole thing by cos of 59.4. That doesn't work, okay? You are subtracting all of that multiplied together. So I have a tendency for myself, so that I don't make that mistake, I have a tendency to put brackets there to remind myself that I am subtracting all of that. Now again, I can do this in my calculator, actually in one step. If I could, there's my calculator, I couldn't remember where I put her. All right, so if I'm gonna put this in my calculator all in one step, it can be done, but here's what I'm gonna do. So F squared is equal to, so I'm gonna do 2.5 squared plus 3.5 squared, and I'm gonna hit equals, which is 18.5. Okay, so I would hit equals to get that is 18.5, which is on my calculator now. Don't know if you can see that, but that's what it is. And then I'm going to put minus, and I'm actually going to put a bracket here. I'm actually going to use my bracket button. I'm going to put a bracket, and I'm going to say 2 times 2.5 times 3.5 times cos of 59.4. And for me, I have to actually put a couple of brackets on the end because I have to close brackets around this, and then I have to put that bracket. Now I'm going to hit equals, and so the whole thing is equal to 9.59. Here's the second mistake that people make. They tell me that this is the answer. This is not, okay? Because this is F squared is this. If I want side F, I'm going to have to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of that, and I'm going to get 3.1. So F is 3.1. All right? So that is how I would go about that. So again, the biggest mistakes that people make are forgetting to work all of that out and subtract it. And it doesn't work out well for them, and they forget to take the square root here. So those are the two major mistakes with this question. So example 3b, and this is the last one. Example 3b. So I said one of the times you use law of cosines is if you know all three sides and you don't know any angles at all. So they give you triangle ABC. And again, if they don't give you the picture, it doesn't matter how you draw it. I just draw a really simple triangle. And it doesn't matter where you put the A, where you put the B. I'm going to do ABC. This is probably nothing like what the picture actually is. It doesn't matter. I just need a visual of where are the angles and where are the sides. And then they tell me side A is 9.6. Okay, well that's angle A, so side A is 9.6. Side B is 20.6. It's got to be right across from angle B. And side C is 14.7. So again, I have this nothing like what it should be because this side should be way shorter than this side. It doesn't make any difference, okay? We're not using this for anything other than to kind of look at it and go, what do I know? What do I need to know? Now they want us to find angle B. This is what I'm looking for. I have to use law of cosines here, but what I'm actually trying to find is an angle at the end of this. Now, what some people do is they actually memorize the law of cosines with a side isolated. Sorry, this should be an equals. They memorize it with a side isolated, and then they memorize it rearranged so that the angle is isolated. I don't bother to do that. I rearrange it once I have the numbers in it. I find it easier to do. If you want, they have it rearranged for you, and it looks like cos of b is equal to a squared plus c squared minus b squared over 2ac. So some people memorize this and they go, okay, if I was looking for, say, a, it would be cos of a is equal to b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2bc, right? If this is the b, if that's what we're trying to find, then it's minus b squared. If we were trying to find a, then it would be minus a squared. And they memorize it that way. I'm not really into memorizing the same formula a bunch of different ways, so I'm actually not going to memorize it that way. But if you wanted to, if your memorization skills were better than your rearranging skills, you could do that. What I would do is I would go, okay, I'm looking for angle B, which means I need to have my b's isolated. So it would be b squared is equal to a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cos of b. Because if I've got a b over here, then I would have my angle b over here. I would now fill in what I know. So side b is 20.6. So 20.6 squared is equal to a squared, which would be 9.6 squared, plus c squared, which is 14.7 squared, minus, and again, I have a tendency to put brackets here just to remind myself that everything from here on is one giant piece stuck together. Because again, I'm going to talk about a really common mistake that people make. So 2 times a, which is 9.6, times c, which is 14.7, times cos of b. So you can see the only letter all the way across here is right here. All right, so I actually take this a little slower than the other one because this is not isolated, it's not by itself. So I take it a little bit slower, do it in a little bit more parts. 20.6 squared, that is 424.36. And then I take these two things and I add them together. I just put 9.6 squared plus 14.7 squared in my calculator. 9.6 squared plus 14.7 squared, and I hit equals, and it tells me 308.25 minus, and then I actually multiply these three things together. So I would do 2 times 9.6 times 14.7, and that gives me 282 cos of b. Now, 0.24. 0.24, I forgot the 0.24. Let me tell you a mistake that a lot of people do. Right here, this is a big one. If you have not paid attention during this video, stop what you're doing. Listen really carefully. What a lot of people do at this point is they do 308.25 minus 282.24. They ignore the fact that there's a cos b on there. But that would be like doing 308.25 minus 282.24x. I can't subtract those two because they're not like terms. I cannot subtract 308.25 and 282.24 because this is all one piece. So what can I do? What I can do is I can subtract 308.25 from this side, so I can subtract 308.25 from this side. So if I do 424.36 and I subtract 308.25, I get 116.11. Here's the second mistake that people make. They say this: that is equal to 282.24 cos of B. If you're not seeing what's wrong there, you will be one of these people making this mistake if you don't pay attention. Where'd that negative go? Where'd that negative go? Right? I took 308.25 and I subtracted 308.25, so that's gone. Where'd that negative go? It didn't go anywhere, so it should still be here. It should still be there. It should still be there. Did I say that enough times yet? Right? If a teacher says it 3 times, it's important. So the negative should still be there. I think that was the 3rd time. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I am multiplying these two things together. So I'm going to divide by negative 282.24. So I'm going to divide by negative 282.24. So I'm going to have cos B is equal to whatever 116.11 divided by negative 282.24 is. Turns out it's negative 0.411, and it keeps on going. Okay, so again, I haven't cleared it off my screen because I don't want to be doing the calculation with something that's rounded off. But it's fine if you just round it off in your writing. So I'm going to bring my cos over here so it becomes that arc cos thing. So I'm going to hit second function cos of my answer, and I get that cos, or sorry, not cos, I get that B, there it is, because I moved the cos, I get that B is 114.3 degrees because they said round it off to the nearest tenth. So I did. Now that took me a while to explain. It takes me way longer to explain it than it does to actually do it. Okay, so don't freak out too badly. It's not as bad as it sounds, but I am explaining step by step every little thing I do. So that's it. That's law of sines, law of cosines. We do not have any more to do. I'm going to give you some practice questions to do. So you will be doing this on Wednesday. So I have review on Thursday. So that would be me going over any homework or anything. And a study day on Friday. And then Monday is a holiday. Yay! Another long weekend. And so that would put a test on Tuesday. That would put a test on Tuesday. That would put a test on Tuesday, May 19th. If for some reason that doesn't work for you, please let me know so we can make adjustments. But at this point, I'm saying Tuesday, May 19th, we will have a test, all right? And then we'll be done chapter 8 and we just have chapter 9. We are moving slowly, which is fine, but we're moving slowly, so I'm already in my brain kind of making some adjustments on some things I want to do with chapter 9. I don't want to skip it entirely because I believe it's very important, but there will be certain pieces I might skip over doing any work for. I might talk about it, but we won't do any work for it. So I'm kind of making adjustments in my head as we go so that it doesn't take us right until June 5th, because again, next week I will be uploading the assignment that's going to cover the whole semester. I'm going to be uploading that to you. It will be due June 5th. And I do want to finish in enough time so that you do have some time where all you're doing is working on the assignment and you don't have any other work to do. All right? I don't want to overload anyone with anything. Especially I know some people are going to work, some people are going to jobs during the day, and so I want to be respectful of that. Okay? So that's sort of the plan, that's the goal. There are some questions that I'm going to be asking you to do here. Please pay attention to the instructions. Does it say round to the 10th? Does it ask you to solve the whole triangle or just find a side or an angle? So just make sure you read directions. That's important in this section. All right, have a good day.